Good afternoon. Welcome to the session of the 2021 New England Federation of Humane Societies Conference. Before I introduce our speaker, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. There are some interactive tools to the right side of your screen. There is a group chat field, a Q&A tab, and a poll tab. If you have any questions, submit them into the Q&A tab. We do also currently have an active poll, so if you go over to the poll tab, you can submit your answer there. This session will be recorded and available later for viewing. 15 minutes after the completion of this session, certificates will automatically be emailed to everybody who has been in attendance for 60 minutes or more. Any questions regarding acceptance of CEUs should be directed to the authority who grants credits for your organization or state. Lastly, after the presentation, we are going to keep this session open for about 15 minutes for anybody who wishes to participate in further conversation or networking. If you'd like to join with your camera, just select the join button, which is at the top right of the video screen. We could admit up to 10 people on the screen at a time. If you don't wish to share your camera, that's totally fine. You can continue talking in the group chat as well. Now to introduce our speaker, Sheila Blanchette. Sheila's love for birds began when she received her first red lorry in 1995. With her developing passion for birds in 2010, Sheila began volunteering at the MSPCA Nevins Farm in Methuen, Massachusetts. This love of bird and the desire to improve understanding and welfare led to the study of avian behavior and applied behavior analysis. In 2015, Sheila became an IAABC certified parrot behavior consultant and trainer, and she also set up her own companion bird education and training service company, Heart of Feathers Education and Training. Heart of Feathers Education and Training offers in-home, online, and phone behavior consultations, along with offering educational programs in person and online. Sheila is connected with several of New England's rescues, MSPCA in Nevins Farm, Foster Parrots in Rhode Island, Northeast Avian Rescue, and Rhode Island Parrot Rescue. Additionally, Sheila volunteers her hands-on rescue experience to support the Quaker Parrot Society. In 2017, she was nominated into the position of Quaker Parrot Society Rehome and Placement Program Chairperson. And now I will turn it over to our speaker, Sheila.
Thank you very much. That was a great intro. And I want to thank everybody for joining this session called Best Practices for Companion Birds. I'll try to make this session interactive. I don't have a great demo bird, so we'll be using my perfect bird, Paco. He will help out along the way. And again, my goal during this session is to give you helpful information, whether you're in a rescue, going to get a bird, have a bird. So this is just some foods for thoughts I hope to help out. And it can help others as well. So the agenda looks deep, but don't worry. We're going to just talk about some examinations when a bird comes in to a rescue. If you get one, just some things to look for. I'm not a vet, but these are just things to help when describing things to your vet to come and check out. Talk about enrichment, environment, and education. And the bird in the picture, that is Took. He is a yellow streak lory, and he loves to be photographed. So you will see him a couple of times throughout this presentation. So let's just do a little quick intro with birds, because again, there's a poll, and I'm hoping people will fill out the poll about companion birds. And I call them companion birds because in the house, people have them in their house. They're taking care of them. So, and companion birds can be exotics, like the ones you're seeing here, African greys, Amazons, budgies. But there can be companion birds that are more domestic farms. People have had chickens in their house and quails and stuff that are. So a lot of stuff I'm showing when I say companion birds, I'm talking about the birds in the home that we love and care for. Now, there are more than 350 varieties of exotic birds that can become companion birds. I wasn't going to show all of them. These are the pictures up here are ones that I've just seen that have come through rescues. All right. Now, depending on what state you live in with these companion birds, some of them, like the blue-throated macaw, and I believe it's the white cockatoos, are on a list because of they're considered endangered species. So some states, you may need to check each state to see if you're required to have a license for these birds. And that does, again, I'm not going to go deep into the rescues, but things that just to be familiar with, as well as the Quaker parrot, who's down here on the bottom. In some states, they are illegal. They're considered an invasive species. So that's why I kind of bring this up now related to birds, because these are great birds, but different states have different rules for them. So it's also important for you to be aware of them, because Quaker parrots are illegal in Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, I think Vermont, but I'm not 100% sure. So when you're intaking birds, it's good to know their species. Okay. The other terminology I just like to help people out is parakeet parrot. It's a general word, right? And usually we use parakeet meaning a smaller bird and parrot meaning a bigger bird. But I've had, rescues reach out to me and they'll send me a picture and say, oh, is this a parrot or what is this? And I will give them the species name. Amazon walking cockatoo. I won't say parrot or parakeet. But it's just some words to be aware of, because when someone calls you and they say, oh, I'm looking for a parrot, you might need a little more information of what they're looking for, because that's a very general term. So I just wanted to bring it up for informational. Right. The other important thing about companion birds is that most of them are monomorphic. Male and female look very similar, and we don't always know when a bird comes into a sanctuary or a rescue, or when people adopt, what the gender is, because people sometimes are looking for specific genders, and we don't know. Now, there are what I call breeder knowledge on social media. It says, oh, if this one's beefier, or if this one has this, but it's not 100% guarantee. There's always outliers of these. So if somebody really wants to know, they can go get a gender test to guarantee it. And it is important to find out, because some things when we talk about behavior is important to know which gender. But if the companion bird produces an egg, it is 100% guarantee it's a female, right? Just to put it out there so people are aware. Because I have had people say to me that my male bird produced an egg, and I've had to explain to them it's not a male bird. So I wanted to note it out there as well. Just something to think about. Okay. We're going to get into, like I said, examination. So this section, like I said, I am not a vet tech, but birds don't show illnesses. They are prey animals, so they're going to hide it. So sometimes we need to just put a little bit of our hat on and take a quick examination. And again, I've worked with some small rescues who do get in one bird once in a while, and they don't have time. And so what I'm just showing is just some quick things to look. And if you see it, maybe call in an avian vet to double check. Right? This is just to help out, because we need to be a little bit of an advocate for our birds and help them out and just double check, especially if a bird was lost, meaning it got outside, somebody found it, and we bring it into the rescue. We want to make sure there's no illness, there's no issues. And if possible, when intaking a bird, if you could quarantine, that would be great. But I get there's space issues. There are details. So these are the things that I'm trying to help you look for to say, okay, we may have to quarantine it, or we need to be aware, because birds can get different infections, diseases, and they're not always quickly noticeable. And that's why blood tests are needed. And I just listed a few here. Right? And why I had some of these on the sheet is so that you know that some of these diseases and viruses are transmittable to other birds. And that's why, again, if it comes in quarantining, at least you're not accidentally passing it to the other birds, right? So I won't sit on this too long. We'll move on to, if you could, again, I get that we're all busy, but weighing, if certain birds that come in, if you could just weigh them, and weight tells you so much about certain birds. And, if you need to, you can reach out to me and I can get you the list, a generic list of what the general weights should be for different species. Some avian vets have them. And it's a starting point. So over time, if the weight goes down, there's something going on. And a gradual, now again, weight can go up and down depending when you weigh. It can go up and down depending when they ate. So if you can do it about the same time. And it's just a food scale. And if you have to put them in a bucket and weigh them, that's fine. And you don't have to do it every bird. It's good to have, if you're adopting out a bird, you can talk about weighting, because it really does give you a great information about the bird. And so, again, birds can molt, their weight can go up and down, there can be underlying issues. If it's a female, the weight may go up because it's going to be laying an egg soon. And like anybody else, it could just be overweight. This again is a picture of my bird too. He's a little overweight. We always joke he's big boned, but we're working on it. Other visual things. And again, this is just a log. So when the birds come in, or if you've just got a bird for the first time and you're just looking, because people get nervous, and it's okay to be a little nervous, is you just do a log of things you notice. So in this one is, the beak overgrown, or their chips. If the beak is getting overgrown, definitely needs an avian vet to trim it up. But it can, again, be some underlying information. Mites come in. And again, that's why I like to do a head visualization with the birds, to look for these tiny little dots to see if they might have mites. Now, sometimes there's visual cues, like in this picture with the cockatiel, that there might have been mites, or there still is. So you're looking, and they're little white dots, and you'll see them around their face. Sometimes they're under their wings. They can be kind of hidden in different parts. So you just have to look. This can be passed to other birds. So it is, you need to look. And that's what I tell people when they find a bird that's from outside and they've got it caged, to just, again, quarantine and look at, just to double check. And again, if you see any of these things, that's why it's important to get to the avian vet to look at it and double check things and get them on the right medication, the right things. Wings, right, are again, a visual check of the wings. Were they trimmed? Were they cut? Were this bottom one of this cockatiel, somebody clipped the tail and the wings? Now the bird can still move around. Now, depending where the trimming was, feathers will grow back. But it's always good to look to see, did they go too far? Do you need an avian vet to just double check some things? So, also, wings can look a little brutal if the birds have night fright. And most of the times I see this with Latino cockatiels, so the real yellow ones, sometimes with conures. And it just means that at night they get spooked, it's dark, they can't see, and they flail around the bottom of the cage, and they get their wings caught in the cage bars, and they can hurt themselves. And it doesn't look great, and it can, you can go to the avian vet and, bandage them up. But it just means if that does happen, we need to add, a night light to the area. Don't completely cover them so they can see their environment if something goes wrong. I've had clients with that, and I've told them to put a baby monitor in. So if they hear it, they can go run downstairs and get the lights on and intervene. But it's good to look at the feathers to just see, are they flighted, not flighted, trimmed, etc. So again, it's just a visual check. How do the feathers look on the body is another visual check. Are they dull? Are they missing some feathers? Are they plucking? Again, there's a lot of different causes, and when I have clients who have this, I do ask them to go bring them to the vet to make sure there isn't any underlying issues. I have a foster who was plucked and ended up being allergies. So it doesn't always mean it's stress. It could be boredom, it could be stress, but it could also be other things. So that's why it's always important just have an avian vet check those things, but it's good to note them. Okay. And we'll get into a little bit more about how to resolve some of these things if they're behavioral issues, but I just wanted you to be aware. Again, you're just doing a little quick check of these things. I know this one's a little hard to look, but it's important, right? Is the visual, under the tail look, making sure everything looks good, it's clean. Check if there's missing feathers, or they're having swollen or strain. Because if there can be trauma, there can be egg binding, which means if it's a female and the egg can't get out, that's a problem. We need a visual thing. The photos you're seeing here is a colloquial prolapse and happens with female birds and mostly cockatoos, but it does happen with other birds. And I want people kind of aware of this one because it's related to, and I'm going to borrow my perfect bird, is when birds are wonderful pets. I have, several of them, and they're cute, they're cuddly, they're so fluffy. But our instinct, can you put your wings down? Thank you for a minute. Let me get to my camera here, is when people pet them, they pet them like a dog all the way down, and then they pull up on the tail, right? Because, they're just so cute and fluffy, and you just want to shake their head. And all of this stroking is overstimulation for a female. It's a mating ritual. And by doing that, we're really overstimulating these birds. And that's why there's a lot of social media and a lot of people, and even myself, is to say, scratch up here, scratch on their head. That's a nice friendship thing. You don't want to be having a boyfriend, girlfriend, or, that type of personality with your bird, right? You want a friendship. So that's why that's why we don't want that stroking. And that's what this can lead to. And the problem with prolapse, surgery is needed to fix it, and it doesn't always guarantee that is going to stay that way. So that's why I'm a big component of kind of education about where to properly, work with your bird. Now, there's touching, right? So, because I do vet checks, with my birds to prepare for, a vet exam, and I'll touch sections because that's where the vet is, but I'm not stroking. So just something, again, educational wise, and things to look for. Right. I know. I'm sorry to put the feces on, but it is needed. And the reason I put it in the slide is I've been to a lot of foster presentations, and it seems like cat people love to talk about feces, so I needed to get it in there. And it's just to look at when a bird comes in and it's got a cage, and maybe you can't do all these examinations, but check the feces. Is there a lot of increase? Is it too watery? Is it changing color? Is there something, not enough? Is it too yellowy? Is it too green? Now I tell people, is there presence of blood red? You really have to look, because the feces can change color based on food. So that's why I like to, just to be careful, always have the vet just double check it. And, you can take it and they can do an exam of it, because I've had discussions with my vet on something, and I'll be a little nervous about the coloring. And the first thing she always says to me is, well, what was the last thing, your bird ate? Oh, he had some nice yams. Well, that'll change the coloring. So they'll still do the test, but there's a possibility. So, but it's good to be aware of the right coloring, the right consistency, how much. Now, again, it depends on when if birds are brought in and you've got the cage, the person may not have cleaned the cage, so you have a lot of it. But you can look at it and you can kind of see how it's looking, or you change the paper and you watch. Okay. And the last part is looking at their feet. Okay. Checking their feet is, are the toenails too long? Are there any injuries that you should be aware of? Are there any missing toes? Checking the band, right? Is the band too tight? Because you may see some swelling around the band. So these are just, again, some visual checks. You could just do a quick little check off to say, it looks okay, or I'm a little concerned here. So that if you do have an avian vet that comes, you can double check some things with them. If you have concerns, put them in a quarantine. Again, I'm not an avian vet. I'm just giving some suggestions of sort of this intake, quick look. Now, again, if you get 400 finches, I'm not expecting you to look at all of them, but you can do kind of a poop check. You can do sort of who's flying, who's setting low. So you can do these visual checks to help when you do have an avian vet come in, some concerns or some things you've seen. And sometimes you'll have volunteers who love just staring at birds, and they're pretty good at observing things as well. All right. So again, I just wanted to go quickly over that. I think I went a little long. So the next part is I always like setting up, the environment for success. And again, it's tough, right? When the cages come in, if they look good, and the bird's in it and it's happy, it's fine. But I just like to make sure that if you can, the bird matches the cage along with the wings and the ability to move around in the cage. Right. There is the Avian Vet Association has this nice little chart out that talks about the minimum cage size and bar spacing. It does width and depth, doesn't really say height, and my theory on height is it also depends on the bird. Yes, every bird should be in this really huge cage, but if they're not used to it or depending on their environment prior, it may be good to stay within the cage they know and slowly increment it. But I also, when looking at the cage bars, I look at the bird and I try to figure out how thick the wing is, right? And I try to use my fingers for the width. And so if it's like a parakeet or finch, I might use my pinky because I'll say, okay, their wings are tiny. And if I can push, if I can't get my fingers through that barring, then I know the finch and the budgies are probably okay. They're not going to hurt them. So there's always a possibility. But what I'm looking for is if I can take my big finger and I can put it through that cage bar, that bird could probably get its wing stuck or some other part. So that's what I'm looking for, safety for the birds. Now, sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes the cage comes and they haven't tried. So you're just trying to do the best you can with it. But they should be able to move around. Their tails should not be touching any parts of it. Their wings should be able to fully spread out and not touch any part. I like the ability that they can fly up and down if possible. All right. Again, perches should be set up in certain ways. All right. So that's what I was talking about. The bar spacing on this side was just about using your fingers to figure out the thickness. Now, placement. This is again, I like food and water dishes that you can easily access from outside, so you don't have to put your hands in the cage out, so they're accessible. But not every cage has that set up, and so you have to be a little bit creative because you don't want to be scaring the birds every time your hands go in, but you also don't want the birds flying out either. So you have to, kind of manipulate what's the best positioning. So I do add a few perches to the back of the cage. So it gives a place for the birds to go. If I have to get the food bowls and they're on the side of the cage, they have a place to go that I'm not putting my hands all the way in there if I have to. Right. There's toys you can add. And again, depending on the bird, sometimes I start them in the corners so that if they're scared of them, you can see it quite right away, and you might have to reduce them and put them somewhere else or have them smaller. Because we don't want it, this bird's coming in, it's in this cage. We don't want to scare it into a position it doesn't move. So sometimes you might have to go smaller or start off with just a few little things and then add if needed. Because I've seen bigger toys than the ones that are in this picture in with a bird who didn't move because there's this big object in the way. And it was a toy. It was a bird toy, but it was too big for it. And if you have multiple birds in a cage, you should have multiple food bowls and water bowls. Sometimes they share, sometimes they don't share. And so you don't want that one bird not being able to eat. The other thing I always look for when the bird comes in and I have it sit down, where is it within the cage? Where is it hanging out? Because it may still be nervous about people, so it wants to hang out in the back. So give it its space there. And if you want to put a little towel area so it can stay back so that you can work in front. And if you have, adopters walking by, the bird has a place to sort of just stay in its little area. Right? Now, sometimes some birds like to be really close to the cage because they're really in fear of the person and they're biting. So that's why I also try to put things in the back to kind of teach the bird to stay in the back of the cage. All right. So again, just things to think about when you're trying to set up the cage or you're looking at it and the best approaches. The other part, like we were talking about with medical, you may have to accommodate if a bird has some blindness or injuries or spayed legs. Birds adapt really well to situations, but sometimes we have to make a few adjustments. It doesn't always mean all the food has to be at the bottom. But again, once you learn how the bird manipulates around the cage, if you just watch a little bit, then you'll know where to put the food. I like flat perches for splayed legs. That's when their legs are kind of split out. They're not in these, they're not up and down, they're out. Because then the bird has a place where it can rest versus perching. Doves and pigeons, same thing, flat perches versus brown ones because of the way they grip. All right. This was a little bit of a lesson where I started teaching a few people about and it's just something to help you. So when cleaning cages, and I'm talking, some of the bigger cages are great because they have the doors on the side and they have a grate below and you can pull it out. So you never have to go in the cage. But every once in a while, like a parakeet cage, where maybe there isn't a grate, and that's probably because I came through because I don't like grates on the parakeet cages, so it's blame me. And you have to clean the bottom of the cage. And as soon as you put your hand in there, the parakeets are going to fly around, or the finches. And you don't want to scare them. You don't want to be aversive to them. So one of the things I've found is with some of these cages, the bottoms pop off, right? If you just squeeze on the cage a little bit, the bottom falls off. So when the birds are just hanging out and you do it really slowly, you can pinch the cage frame and lift it from the bottom. And sometimes I tell people, if you want to practice, get one without any birds in it so you can practice the sort of the pinch. And you just slowly lift it up. Birds are still hanging out and you shift it to the other side. All right, so you just do it real slowly, right? No sudden moves, and you make sure you have a flat space you can bring it to really quickly, and then you drop it down. Now you can clean the bottom of the cage, get all the stuff out, and then just reverse it, put it right back. And your hands were never in the cage. And if you do it slow enough, the birds don't really know what really happened. Again, just suggestions to help with the less stress parts of cleaning a cage. Let's see if I can find my mouse. There it is. So so here's an example of, this was a foster of mine. The cage setup doesn't mean it has to be stuffed with bird toys, but there should be some that are interactive and interesting to the bird. The bird should be able to move around easily, and get to places. There should be like a place, I always like the back of the cage where the bird can go to just have a quiet spot to do it. And food and water should be easily accessible, that you're not, like I said, if it had it on the side, the cage, those are the best. If not, near a door that you could get yourself in and out without disrupting the bird. This Quaker knew how to go in and out of the cage because it was a foster mine, so I could just put it on the door frame and I didn't have any issues. But just, again, food for thought of just trying to be successful so that the birds don't have this aversive to humans every time we're trying to clean their cage. The cage should be this really safe, a wonderful place they want to be. That they know that nothing bad is going to happen. All good things should happen in the cage. There should be wonderful treats in the cage, foraging, great things. And that's what, again, I'm not a nutritionist either, but I want to talk about food really quickly because there's a whole brands of foods out there. There's a ton of them. And they're all different varieties. And if you're a rescue or a place that gets birds taken in, you take donations and you get all kinds of bird seeds. And most of them are kind of fatty and not the healthiest for birds. But if the bird's only there temporary, it's not an end all be all. You can do it. And a lot of people say, oh, switch it to pellets. But if the bird's only there for a short period of time, you could start to transition and have the doctors or whoever learned how to transition. Or you could teach, or when you're talking to them, you could talk about transitioning. But a lot of the food sometimes we get in has a lot of sunflower seeds, peanuts. They may even have food in it that really doesn't have any fat. Like I've seen some of the food have dry corn in it. And there's no value to it. It's a filler of, So that's why, I'm trying to find that happy medium where the food is like this medium food here. It's got some seeds. It's got a few sunflower seeds, so it's not horrible. It's not the end, It just shouldn't be, chucked full of things that the bird may or may not eat. I mean, I do like Supreme and all these others, and there's other foods that are perfectly fine. Some of them are harder to transition birds to, and the vets would like you to transition them to. And, we want healthy birds. We really do want them not to have diseases and stuff. So it is a transition. And I found this, so this is not mine. I think it made me kind of laugh, and which was a little bird avian pyramid. And again, it's not exact, but it's just to try to help people figure out what's best for the birds and what to give them. And again, you have to transition them. I like fruits and vegetables. I like trying different things with the birds to get them interested. We will talk about this a little further of, getting some nice healthy foods and leafies and things with great vitamins and stuff. And birds may not eat it, and they'll look at you just like any of us who don't like Brussels sprouts. I'm not touching that. So you have to kind of get creative. But it's something to just think about. But if people do bring fruits and vegetables in for the birds, I always tell people, or even yourself, if you have a bird and you give fruits and vegetables, and they go, oh, they don't eat it. I wouldn't leave it there all day. I don't want it to collect fruit fly. So if within 2 hours they're not eating it, I would pull it and then maybe try something else later. And especially if you have a rescue or somebody who you put this stuff in there and it just sits there all day and maybe till the next day. I'm always worried about fruit flies and other bugs. So if people put it into the cage, I always say, within 2 hours, if they're not eating it, I mean, if they ate it, great. But if they didn't, I would just pull it out and we'll try again later for some stuff. Other parts about nutritional care, like I was saying, not all food is equal. And this has come up where there's a brand, it says parrot food on it. It's got some pretty pictures of parrots on them. You pour it in the bowl and you give it to whatever. And again, back to that general term, parrot. And why I'm showing this picture is this parrot food was given to one of these birds that's in the picture. And these are all, in theory, kind of defined as parrots. You might say lovebirds might be parakeets, but they're a little bit different, so they're parrots. But in reality, I don't know if any of them are one one might be able to eat it. So this was given to the lovebirds. And that's too big of food. First of all, there's this big giant hazelnut in here that they'll never break open. So this is too big. Now it says parrot food, and it's got a little conure, it's got some stuff. So you'd say, oh, okay, maybe that's, it wouldn't go to this Lori because this is a special bird and they eat special food. They don't even eat seeds. So that wouldn't work for that bird. The kayaks might eat it. They might throw it at you. The same with the Amazons. The Amazons might eat it. And again, they may throw it at you too. So that's why I said food isn't always equal. So it's important to look at the food, determine what the best bird is for it, again, for the short period of time if it's what you have. And what I recommend is label, right? Putting containers together with the food associated with the bird so that either helps volunteers, helps staff, help family members. Because it's really easy to grab something and say, oh, it's parrot food, I will give it to these birds, versus you could put the name of the bird on the food container and then have it on their cage, or, you can have cockatiel mix and look, there's a bird's cockatiel. So somebody goes, oh, I know that goes to there. So help people out with the right food for the right bird. Right. That's all. I won't kill on nutritional care. I'm just trying to help out ideas to help assist putting things together when you get a bird, or you get multiple birds, or a stack of birds. So let's see. I think I got enough time to whip through the next couple of slides here. Enrichment, and Emily's smart just was doing a great thing on enrichment, so I'm going to try not to piggyback on some of her wonderful ideas. But when a bird comes in, it is important we do some kind of enrichment. Doesn't matter what, just something, because it provides activity. It just brings a quality of life when they come in, and it helps adopters. And these things are really helpful, right? We don't want a bored bird. It creates other behaviors. But what I've heard is, well, I get this enrichment, or they don't play with it. They don't do anything. And again, the toy could be too big. It could be too small. They may have never had an opportunity to play with anything. The bird may have a fear of toys. So let's see if I can do this. I've seen, and I try to tell people this a lot. I'm just going to borrow something I have here. They got this cute little bird and they got a new toy and they go, look at the new toy. And they put it right in front of the face of the poor bird. And now the bird is like, that's a scary item. That's what I mean by incorrectly introducing a toy. We've got to do it in a very spacious way. And either they find out about it or we ease it in, so on. It could be a lack of challenge, right? The bird's seen it before. It's worked on it. It's done with it. It's bored. It goes, I've done that 600 times. I'm done with it. Or it could be too complicated. I've seen people buy these great, beautiful enrichment toys where they pull this out and the food's in there and the bird looks at it and goes, I have no idea what you want me to do. Right? So that's why we have to do it at the pace of the bird. We have to learn. We have to watch. And all of this is important because without some of this enrichment and working for food, birds will develop fear or boredom or abnormal repetitive. All right, see if I can do this. This video might be a little choppy for you guys, so I'm sorry. But the repetitive motion is when you can see there's no music going on. Yeah, you can hear some birds in the background, maybe. But it does the same motion, right? There's nothing going on. It's sort of like a calming mechanism. So that is repetitive behavior. I could count it. I could see it happen. Right? Not always, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a demonstration so you can see it. Let me move to the next. So this is why we have to become creative enrichment warriors. That's what I call it. We've got to, and you can have your volunteers do this. You can reach out to me for ideas, and I'm going to give you objects that you probably already have somewhere, right? We just got to find out what the companion bird loves to eat. And usually it's one of these items. It's usually, there's always something bad they like to eat. And that, for the time being, that's fine. But you could start off just by stuffing it into a toilet paper roll. So pieces are sticking out so they can figure it out and they can chew on it. My favorite one is the millet ball. This is great for cockatiels, finches, parakeets, anybody who likes millet. And it's just a rabbit, I call it a rabbit metal hay ball. It's wired. And I'll stuff millet and hay and maybe paper and straw and stuff and mix it up so that they have to forage for this yummy millet. They'll work for it. Usually by the time you put it up and you disappear and come back, it's usually empty. If the bird's nervous about these things, you can place it, in a corner somewhere so they're not so nervous about it, or leave it outside the cage for a little while and then slowly introduce it. But again, these are great little things to do. Volunteers can put them together and then hang them. You can find little boxes to put stuff in, again, and I'm showing this one just as a demonstration. I do tell people to watch about boxes. We don't want to turn them into nesting places and have more birds or more eggs or anything. But if it's creative enough, they'll forage in and look for their favorite millet food and do it as well. So I think I'm going to have one more video. So this is where I kind of went crazy with foraging. And I've got all kinds of, I got this millet ball here in the middle. I know it's a little choppy. And the parakeets are having a good time. There's another little toy in the back with some, and there's one over here and a swing. And these birds are working and they're busy and they're having a good time. I don't know if they're having a good time, but they're working for their food, which keeps them busy. And that's what you want. You want them just, especially since if you're rescuing, you're trying to keep them busy until an adopter comes. This is great enrichment for them. All right, I will keep moving. Let's see. This one will be a little choppy for you to see. You can be creative with fruits and vegetables and things. This is just a wooden block that has some holes in it. And I've taken some lettuce and some parsley and a little tad of millet, and I've wrapped them in and I put them into these blocks. And this is a foster cockatiel I have. You can see he has a little bit of plucking, but he has allergies. And this, instead of chopping it up into a bowl, I turned it into something for him to investigate, to look at. So you can get really creative, and you can put your volunteers to work at night and just say, here's some supplies, and they can kind of sort of look and become these great warriors for you. I love doing enrichment for grounder birds. Those are birds that eat, budgies, cockatiels, doves, pigeons. They all eat on the ground, not up top. So I create little boxes. As long as they're not making a nest out of them, I put some paper and their favorite food in it. And they'll fly down and they'll just start foraging away. They'll push the papers aside and start looking. So it's very simple enrichment. It's just a little cardboard box with some paper in it. Again, I'm just looking for simple things you could do real quickly to just keep the birds busy. Okay. So again, there are many, household items that are safe, or you watch, right? That's what I tell people. I love Dixie cups. And I just tell people, you could put the Dixie cup in, put some food in it. And as long as the bird's just shredding it, not eating it, just shredding it, it's safe. And sometimes you have to watch, straws and stuff. And you could start to build, and you could start really small, tiny, with, I probably should have had the non-bleached coffee paper filter up there, but, and have the food sitting on top of it. And then later on you fold it. So you can be really creative. And one of the things that does come up is you build all this stuff and then you go, I have no way how do I hang it? Right. And so just for the laugh, right. Those retractable leashes that, you always are throwing out because they have no purpose. They do have a purpose. If you need to hang a bird toy, and the leash looks safe, you have to look at it a little bit, make sure it's not de-threading. You can say, let's see, I need it to be about this length to hang down, cut it, and now you can tie it, and you have a hook to hang your toys with. Now, again, you just look at the safety of it. and make sure it's not de-threading and stuff. But I've found a couple of times that has been helpful, and I've had conures hanging off of it, not chewing on the leash, but going down below. So you can always come up with ideas. And if you really aren't sure, please reach out to me. With a little wine, I am pretty creative. So this is something I created for one of my clients. For their cockatoo had been there, done that. And so I built this, and there's stuffing in the little hula guy, but and there's food in here and there's food up there. So you can really become really crazy. Yeah. But again, start slow and easy, because we had to put this wonderful hula a little bit of a distance, and we slowly brought it into the room because we don't want to scare the cockatoo. And it got about, I don't know, halfway in the room, and she said then the cockatoo came down and then just didn't beat it up, like wasn't mad at it, started pulling at it and disassembling it and holding it and stuff. So it needed a moment. So, but again, watch how the bird interacts with the toy. Make sure that it's shredding it, it's not nesting it and stuff. And start silly easy. I mean, really easy. If the Dixie cup is too big, cut it in half, make it small, put it in the food bowl. If first don't succeed, make it simpler, try again. But avoid, everybody loves putting cardboard boxes in for birds because they're in there. Of course they're in there because they're now like, oh, like you gave me a nest. Thank you so much, person. And that's why they're shredding it. So we need to avoid doing that. And avoid items that have glue, paint, not made outside the U.S. Check it, make sure it's safe. I always say if it's kid safe, it's probably bird safe, but double check everything. You need to be sort of the advocate of your bird when you're doing these things. But it is fun for volunteers to do these things. And if you need some ideas, please reach out. I can be creative when I need to be. And yes, I still buy toys, but I can be creative. So so here's, again, another foster of mine who was plucking. And this is what I mean about slowly enriching. This is going to be a little choppy on your screen, but that's okay because you can see all I have is this Dixie cup hanging down. It has the yummy item they want. I made it so it was easy enough, but a little work. And then he gets it out, right? We worked on that. And over time, I made it a little more difficult. We got rid of, he had some favorite toys I didn't like, but I left him because, again, it was a foster, and I slowly faded him out. And then we've got things he does like to play with, and slowly the plucking reduced. And he got adopted and he stayed in the home for a very long time, did pass away, but, it was a great success of how enrichment can work. All right. Now the big part, let's see, I just want to make sure I have enough time. I think so. And we'll go into some behavior. Now, let's see if you can see this one. I always tell people behavior has a purpose for a bird, right? It's not our purpose, it's theirs. And we need to observe it. It's, I always laugh with this video because this African gray is like, I don't need a human. I can scratch my own face. But we need to describe what we see. We can't describe emotions, happy, sad, because it becomes a label, and that's when some rescues get intakes and the person says, hates, dislikes. It doesn't give us a lot of information. We need the whole scenario. So sometimes we need to see it, because I've had clients who have told me that the bird doesn't like their significant other. And we'll do, I used to do in-home until COVID, but now we do it, and I'll have the significant other approach the bird. And you can see different things, and I'll demo in a minute. But it could be the person's speed, right? Some people just move faster than others, and it's like, oh, you got to slow down. Or what they're wearing. It could be that the bird doesn't like that color, or it could be that time of day. There could be different things. So that's why we need to observe what's going on, versus labeling it, saying, oh, that's what the bird does. That is what the bird is. That's not always true. So this is a little bit, I was working with Dr. Pat Anderson, another bird trainer, and we were coming up with body language. And this isn't 100%. But I use this to help people when they're approaching a cage. So if you're cleaning, whether it's your own bird, when you're approaching the cage, if the bird is doing certain things, this is information to us that we need to listen, right? We can't just push past it. And sometimes we feel like we have to because we got to get this done. And if we just step back and say, well, I don't have to do it right this second. You know what? I don't have to feed them at 9 a.m. You know, I've approached and the eyes are pinning. You know what? I'll come back at 9:30 and see what happens, you know. And that's what's important. We approach the bird, we need to be watching the behavior. You know, if the eyes are pinning, something's going to happen. You know, if they freeze or thin down. Of course, the open beak, a lot of us seen it. The wing flicks I have on here, those are mostly doves and pigeons. I've gotten flicked by a dove a couple of times because I moved a little too fast to do something and get the sort of karate chop at you. There's, you know, birds can make threading noises. Cockatiels do a lot of hissing, bigger body. And again, but why I'm showing this chart is if we keep pushing past some of these things, it will lead to biting. So it could be, right? I just saw a question and I may answer it. So if the African gray is puffed up or the head is bobbing, it depends. Again, I'd have to know a little bit more what's going on, but it could be we're pushing past its comfort level. Now, if you were playing a game or you were dancing, it might be involved. But if it's, let me bring back my perfect bird. But if they're looking at you and that head just goes like this as you're approaching and maybe the heads come down, you might be moving too fast or something in the environment's changed. That was a really good question. Right. So that's why, and I'll answer a few of the other questions I just saw. That one just caught my attention. And we could talk more about body language, but let me show you some stuff. Let me get past some of this. But I wanted you to be aware of it. So once in a while, I'll go to a rescue or someplace, and somebody will say, you know, my bird bites, but I can't get it to redo it when I'm there, and so I become the guinea pig. And so I try to do it safely, and I'll just push my finger along, just any place safe that I can. And if you watch, and this bird, you know, will come out and attack. I've gone past this bird's comfort zone just by me touching that cage. I've gone over its threshold. I'll show it again real quickly, and I know it's a little choppy on there on the screen, but I'm just touching. And if you watch, the wings go out. There's this flare. I have pushed the bird over threshold just by touching its cage. Right? So I know I'm going to have to figure out how to approach this bird a little differently. That's Jay. He was another foster of mine. You'll get to see him again. This is what we sometimes see when we're cleaning cages, and this is how sometimes I'll watch. You know, I'm helping a volunteer and trying to explain body language, and they'll open the cage door, and this bird comes charging and puts his beak down. You know, we've come in too quickly, right, into the cage. We've startled him. He's not happy with our approach, so we have to find out a different way. That's why I like the doors. That's why I like cage doors that open on the side, so I don't have to put my hands in a cage. And we can train birds to station, and we can train birds to do certain things so that we can be safe. But it's good to notice those so that we go, okay, how do I not become the aversive? How do I train the bird to station, and I can still get some things done? Let me get past this one. So this will hopefully, this is my foster. Really, he was doing well, but I was introducing a stranger, which was my significant other, because the bird had been working with me. And he was all cute and fuzzy until I had my significant other come in. And again, this will be a little choppy, but it's great body language. Here's all that the fluffiness. He's building himself up really big because he's nervous. He is really nervous. He doesn't like this person in the room. Right. And I have, again, because I have to log these things and I have to observe. So my poor significant other standing there, I'm like, don't do anything, just stand there. But if you watch, right, how big he's getting, and he lunges and does all this, then I have my poor significant other leave. And if you watch, you'll see the difference. As soon as he leaves, the feathers all go back down. See, everything. He poops. He's like, okay, all right, the world's better now. You know that. So this is why we have to be careful about behavior, not push through when there's fear associated with it. We have to work. We have to figure out ways to work with the bird, especially if he's going to go up for adoption, because you don't want to pass that behavior to the next person unless, we offer education and help them through, some consultations. Whoops. All right. Now, like I said, I could talk forever about birds, and I love volunteering. And I think sometimes when I volunteer, some of the places are like, you can go now, because I love interacting and I love doing things. Now, the problem is because when I go in, I will take certain birds out, but I already have in my head how I'm going to put them back in. I've already got a plan, because I don't take birds out of a cage if I haven't figured out how to get them back in, because I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be going, okay, back in, go ahead, go. Or, they're attached to me and I'm ripping them off I want always the behavior to be positive. So I already have in my head, oh, I know they like Nutriberry, so I'm not putting them in the food bowl right now. I'm going to have them out for a little bit, and I have a whole big handful of Nutriberries, and I'll put them in the cage, and I'll just let them see it, and after a while, they'll just go in. If I can't figure it out, they don't come out. But it's always, because we hear people always saying, oh, the birds need to be out all the time. That's great. But if you can't figure out how to get them back in, then you're now becoming aversive, because now you're going to put them back in, and these birds are never going to want to go back in that cage. So we have to have a plan, right? And just because it's friendly, I always say this, just because, you do this and they step up on you and you're like, oh, look how friendly he is. Guess what? He's like, you're the most reinforcing. I love you. Why would I want to go back in the cage? And then for 20 minutes, you're doing, go get back in, So we want that positive interaction. So if he steps up, great. And then in a little while, we give him something yummy, or we do something in the cage and we get him back in. So it's always positive, always. All right. And so this is some demonstrations. They're a little choppy again, but I love doves, right? Someday I will have a couple of them. And this dove, I wanted out, get the wings going, but I had a plan on having him get back in, right? And I had redone the food. I knew how much he liked millet, so I had redone it, set up a nice little foraging tray. His friend's already in there, so he's jealous about that too. And in he goes. So I'm not any part of that, right? I'm training for them to go into the cage on his own. No interaction by me. I'm not an aversive. Right. This is, yes, I had a quail for a little while as a foster, and we were training it to go into its crate. It's hard to see, and again, I'll try to replay this again. There's a little snuggie, those dog snuggies that you put the treats in? I put his favorite food in the little snuggie. That's how I got him in. He has a little sandbox outside, but I was training him to go into his cage on his own. I'm a big believer teaching them to go in on their own, so I'm not the bad person. All right. So where this all leads to is enrichment. If you teach enrichment, and that's what this is Took, my bird, he's getting a little yummy piece. He's working, there's some yummy pieces he really loves in there. This is an enrichment toy I built for him. And it's a little more complex. He's got to work at this. But this is the goal of all of this is how you put him to bed at night. So he doesn't get these pieces until it's closer to nighttime where I need him to go in. And you get to see my whole setup. So you really get to see I get a little carried away with my birds. He's a yellow streak lorry. And that's how I get him in at night. I don't work that hard. So my last food of thought, we're coming to the end, is I am a big component of foster care for birds. There are certain birds that come into, and this is probably its own topic itself, but it's a food for thought, there's some birds that come into the shelter, do great in a rescue, they're fantastic, they're like, you know what, they eat, they're doing great, they're enriched, perfect, they're up for adoption, great. But some come in and there's a behavior and you can't figure it out, or you can't assist her. There's just something. Or maybe it doesn't show up. The person wrote, nope, there's a problem, but you can't see it because in a shelter, behavior changes. It's a new change. If we have avian foster people who are trained, and we can help them train and tend, they can watch the behavior, and we can help them train the bird. And when the bird is ready, there's a little bit back and forth between the rescue and the foster, back and forth. But then once it adopts out, you've got all this information you can give the adopters. The adopters can learn this stuff, transition, and the bird stays in the home. And I've done this several times, and I'll tell you, it reduces the return of birds. It's right, I've probably fostered, I think I looked the last time I looked, it might have been 30 birds. I've only kept a few, I think 2, But once we do all this and we put them in the homes, so the one you saw, the one who was biting, that was Jay. He went into he had a fantastic story. He got adopted. He went to a wonderful home, and he never bit anybody. He loved everybody. So it can work. Just, again, there is some food for thought around this, but I wanted to present it. And just best practice we went over is beak to feet medical exam. We take away, do it, worst case, do some weight, dress for success environment, proper setup, look at nutrition. Enrichment can be fun for everybody, and then behavior serves a purpose. So there should be some bird education. Okay. I know I speeded up, and I'm going to pass it back if you have any questions. And you can also, I had to put a pug photo because I didn't want this all to be about birds. That's my pug, Cheyenne. But you can always reach out to me if you have any questions, anything. I help rescues. That is my biggest thing. So I am always, if you reach out to me, I will say yes, but, I'll say, just give me a minute. So that is part of it. I want to help the rescues. That is sort of my goal in life, is to help, and then help out with the clients. All right. I will stop here and pass it back. If anybody has any questions or anything, please let me know. I think I left enough time, or I went really long. I'm sorry.
No, totally enough time.
I got excited. I told you, I talk about birds. I get so excited about them.
Thank you. That was great. A lot of good information in there. I did see one question in the chat. Someone was asking, how often can they have millet?
It depends on the situation, so I'm going to be careful of this word. If you're part of a sanctuary or rescue and you're doing enrichment, then go ahead and just use it as part of the enrichment, right, of filling it so they have something to do. If you're trying to do training, right, where we're training with it, then it should only be used for training. So it's just based on what you're trying to do. Real quick, sorry, I meant to show this, and I'm sorry about that. I told you I go nuts with enrichment. Let's see, here we go. You can build, these are water caps, and I have a little cartoon, and I have inside of them is millet. So there's always, they'll get it, but it should be used for a training tool versus a daily free. So my statement to a lot of my clients is food should not be free. We should have it somewhere. And millet especially, because that is such a high value. We should make them work for it. I hope that answered the question, even though it was sort of a part A, part B.
I think so. There's also another one. It looks like somebody had to step out when you were talking about a particular topic that reduced returns of adopted birds, and she was just wondering if she could hear that full thought again.
I think it was about the foster care. I'll have to double check with that. So I've worked with several of the local rescues where birds come in. I'll try to do this quickly, about foster care, meaning the bird comes to a foster person like myself or other people we can train, and the foster works with them. Now, again, the bird has to be in the place, or the rescue is showing some kind of stress. So maybe while it's there, it's plucking, right? The environment's too overwhelming for them. It could be they're not eating. There could be other, maybe there's a medical thing. And so the stress of being in the rescue is just not the right environment. So it goes to a foster home. And I have found, and I've done I did a mini research, and it was, I think, published in Bark of Guild, the PPG. I did a really mini study about foster birds and success, of meaning they go to a foster home helps, the shelter helps, transitions to a new home. How many of those birds got returned? And it was at 60%, meaning not returned. But the birds that were returned were not due to behavior, that the person had to go to assisted living or passed away, had nothing to do with behavior problems. So that's why I really am a big component about foster care, that, it does sound like, oh, I'm moving the bird around, but if it's done right and the transition is done right, it's a wonderful tool in the toolbox.
Looks like another question kind of along that line. For shelters that send their birds into foster, how do you reduce the stress level once they get adopted and have to return to the shelter to then go to the new adopters?
So again, there may be and this is that transitional plan, sometimes when the birds come back, if they can go back to the foster, right, versus coming back to the shelter, going back to the foster they had, that helps, because the person knows how to work with that bird and figure out what happened and start to reduce that level before going back out to the adopters. And I've had that where a bird, again, in the situation that the owner had passed away, and the bird, instead of going to the shelter, it just came back to me. And we just worked with the bird again and figured out what behaviors and stuff. But I'm also a big component of when it goes from foster to the home, even if it might skip through the shelter real quickly. It should just be a travel, like it travels to the shelter and comes back. There should be a transitional plan. And that's one of the things I have with adopters before. If the rescue says, oh, we have a doctor for your bird, well, I'll interview them and say, this is the plan you have to do with this bird. It's sort of like a dog plan, right? You have adopters with dogs, and you say, this is the plan. And if the adopter goes, yeah, that's great, then that might not be the best person. I know we want to get the birds adopted, but it's sort of the same plan. You have to have this transitional plan and the support as well afterwards. I don't know if that answered it, but you can always reach out to me about it. We can talk more about fosters. I love it. So please reach out. I love talking about fosters. And sadly, like I said, I've only, out of the 30, I've kept 2. And I have one now, and I really would like it to get adopted, but because he's got some issues, we're on the fence where this bird's going to end up. So he may get stuck here. I don't know. But the problem is if I keep too many, I can't foster. So that's why they've got to go. But right now I'm blaming COVID. So that's why that bird has not moved on.
Awesome. Well, I think that covers all of the questions that were in the Q&A. So thank you again so much, Sheila, for that awesome presentation. I feel like there was so much good information in there. And thank you to all of our attendees for attending this session. A link to the post-session survey has been posted in the group chat. If everybody could take a chance to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. We're going to keep this session open for 15 minutes for anybody who wishes to participate in further conversations or networking. And if you'd like to join with your camera, just select the join button at the top right of the video screen. We can admit up to 10 people on the screen at a time. If you don't wish to share your camera, you can just continue talking in the group chat.
That's all right. We can all hang out here.